we're having the Kemba discussion, and then you see Rozier, and we were talking about it on the thread.
He's calling.
You asked this question. I don't think anybody alive thought that this was a play that they were going to make that offseason when Kyrie left. Rozier was a goner. And in fact, I think the only thing you can question in a hindsight move is whether Danny should have dealt Rozier mid-season at the deadline to be able to get something back for him. And I think the answer to that is unequivocally, absolutely yes. I think that was a big misstep. But seeing as what, knowing what we know now, would you have taken Terry for the money Charlotte gave him, which again was considered a massive overpay? Everyone was like, Charlotte,
they give him
this for what? Versus
Kemba, right?
Who at the time, everybody, myself included, was very excited about Kemba as a really good addition and a nice stopgap after losing Kyrie, where you felt you might not lose that much. So at the time, I don't think anybody would have said it, but now looking back, if you had it all to do over again, would they have been better off with Rozier and his money versus what they have with Kemba right now?
So with his money is the key word. Obviously, with his money, yes, because the big knock on Kemba is, or not. It's not even really. It's not Kemba's fault. It's the Celtics cap situation is where it is right now, and obviously, the less money you have tied to these guys, the less harder it's going to be to get out of it in an off season if you're trying to, trade players or anything like that. So based on the money, yes. Here's what I'll say though about Terry Rozier. Great player, best fourth quarter guard of the year, really, based on the numbers that we're seeing. But I'm not sure, we talk about fit, I'm not sure he fits any better than Kemba Walker does he? What is going on?
Who's listening to something right now?
Somebody is listening to something. I think it's Josue. Now he's on mute. Okay.
All right.
Let me finish my thought.
Sorry about that,
thought
I'm trying to get this thing from Max right now. Max, give me the scoop right now. Give me 1 second.
I know it too, and I'm trying to get it also. So Nick's trying to get it for us.
Why am I out of the loop here?
I'll tell you about it in a little bit.
All right, let me just finish my freaking thought, okay? Even though nobody even cares anymore. Josue's muted, doesn't even know it.
What's the point of this show?
What is the point of this show? All right, listen. This is what I say about Rozier. Fit-wise with this Celtics team, I'm not sure he's any better than Kemba is.
Horrible
and I don't
fit.
think he's anywhere near. I don't think he's anywhere near the type of a leader and like sort of. And this isn't really a knock at Rozier. It's just that I just think the Celtics with Kemba, with Brown, and with Tatum needed maybe an older guy, somebody that could sort of allow them to do their thing. I don't think Rozier had any intention of handing the reins over to a guy like Brown or a guy like Tatum, and he's proven that, he can be a star in his own right. So he's not necessarily wrong for that. I just think you have three butting heads in Rozier, Brown, and Tatum, all vying for, you talk about you shoot, I shoot. I think you get a lot of that with a guy like Rozier here. And I think that's, honestly, I think him and Kyrie were button heads. I think they were really the two that, were button heads when you talk about the chemistry being off. So yeah, I think the Celtics made the right decision. But that being said, I love Rozier. I mean, Scary Terry, he's fun to watch. I just don't think that you'd have
great personality.
You'd have to, if you were going to keep Rozier, you almost might have to think about trading like Brown, because I just don't think they all would be able to fit together.
That whole era from like 2016 through 2020 that ultimately was, so much of it gets blamed on Kyrie. But you do have to look back on some of the other characters that were involved, like Terry Rozier. And I know he just got a standing ovation during pregame tonight, and they were going nuts when he was swapping jerseys with Rob Williams after the game. And
Nice.
they love him. He had that moment against Milwaukee and even in that Philly series to some degree where he was just a brilliant, aggressive guard for this team. When Smart was down, when Kyrie was down in that postseason, he stepped up in a massive way. And I'll say this too. He gets the blame for that Game 7 against Cleveland, even though he was phenomenal in the Game 6 at Cleveland where they could have clinched the series.
He's dunking that game. They all did, but he was completely off in that game.
But the next year, where he had to go back to being that third guard, it was just clear that he wasn't comfortable with it and made it known. Day after the season, he goes on First Take and starts talking about us not running the plays and not doing things right and this and that. There were just murmurings all around the team of his, dissatisfaction with his role. And I thought during that year that Ainge could have solved a lot of problems by trading him. And I still believe that to this day. That could have salvaged that team to some degree. Whether it would have worked out long term to do that, whether they would have even got anything, I just think he was so unhappy on that team that he needed to go. And ultimately, that was a big reason he ended up going to Charlotte. They got Kemba out of the deal. And I just think that's where everyone ultimately wanted to end up. Kemba wanted to be in Boston. Rozier won his own team, and that was the history. And so even if Rozier wanted to stay and that would have been a good fit, I still say keep Kemba because I believe the 2020 Celtics had a chance to win a championship, and that was with Kemba, Brown, Tatum, and Hayward. That team, when they were healthy, were so dominant that year.
I don't think they beat the Lakers, but they should have gone there. They should have gone.
And so I think that run was worth Kemba, even if the rest of the contract doesn't go amazingly. And do you think Rozier could have, at point guard, done the same thing with that team?
I mean, it's impossible to say. I think he's certainly talented. He's certainly talented enough, but I think it goes back to, do these guys will they play well together, right? I mean, we're already seeing that issue to an extent right now. And I just think tossing in a guy like Rozier, who, like you said, Bobby, clearly was dissatisfied with his role, clearly thought he was just as good as these other guys that were playing in front of him. And credit to him, he's gone on to the Hornets and he's showed that he is, a star in this league and one of the better, clutch. He's playing like one of the best clutch point guards in the NBA this season. So, again, I mean, is he a type of guy who's going to take a backseat to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? Absolutely not. So, I just don't think it would have worked here. Now, money-wise, sure, you're paying him less, and he allows you to get out from underneath the contract easier. And I mean, he's an extremely tradable guy if you needed to, if he was putting this type of production up. Unlike Kemba Walker, who many feel like, including John, feels like isn't tradable at all.
No, yeah, and the case for him would be you can go long-term with him, with Brown, with Tatum, and kind of build something there with a core, rather than Kemba being a bit more of a short-term fix that isn't in line with those guys' ages.
Right.
I just think at that time it was a no-brainer too, Jimmy. I mean, you bring in a veteran, a perennial all-star. Besides the fact that Rozier obviously has shown that he can come up big in the postseason, I just don't think he has pains to do. I mean, from the Celtics perspective at least, right? I mean, if you're looking from the way things ended after 2019 season, it's like, wait, let's try to get one. Let's try to split this up as much as we can without breaking, the best core guys that we have. And of course, that was Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. And then they traded for an all-star in Kemba Walker. So I just think at that time it was just too much of a no-brainer to just say, you know what, let's just give the young guy a shot here. I just think they would have been. It's too risky. It was too risky of a move.
It was 1,000% an obvious move to let Rozier leave and to bring Kemba on. I don't think you can debate that.
Yeah, how can you say no? How can you say no to an all-star that really wants to come to your team?
There was at that point, if you polled 1,000 people, it would have been 999 who would have said, are you kidding? Of course it's Kemba. I'm literally saying, looking back at it now, it's not.
No, I get what you're saying.
It's people's jobs to make these determinations about who the long-term fit is and whether this guy's knees are going to hold up or how that style of play. But what Jimmy said right out of the gate, I think, is the number one point here, which is everyone will see the stats, see Rozier playing. His efficiency is way up this year over what it's been, and that's kind of the difference. He's knocking down more threes. He's shooting at a higher clip. I mean, people have to remember his final season with the Celtics, my God, was he
disaster.
Bad.
Oh, even in the playoffs,
as bad as it gets, both in terms of refusal to accept his role, but also just his percentages across the board were so bad. He had such a bad year after that amazing stint in the playoffs there. So it was really depressing to see it. I mean, he shot 38% from the floor. I mean, he was he was just a chucker. And honestly, he was never a good shooter. He still
isn't he 41 now?
No, he's 47% this year, which is crazy.
Really?
He had never eclipsed 40%.
He never eclipsed 40,
ever. Okay. But the threes were okay. 38%, 35% his last 2 years, they were passable. But I mean, he'd never eclipsed 38%. 40% shooting.
That was the big indicator too. If you're the Celtics, that's like a red flag,
Yeah.
The Celtics have been so fortunate with these scoring point guards. It's just like, well, wait a minute, this guy's not even in the 40%. No, absolutely not. Like you went from Isaiah's MVP candidate season to Kyrie Irving, what he does with that basketball on a string and tearing it up, and then you go to Rozier, not putting up 40, not being able to sustain a 40% shoot percentage, like that's like, wait a minute. Brad's like, I can't have this. I can't deal with this as my starting point guard. He's been spoiled a bit in a good way.
Right.
You know, they've been good. They've been good. The basketball gods have been good to them in that point guard spot.
Score first point guard who isn't really able to score at a high enough clip to justify his existence. I think it's an automatic. So